I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're uncovering answers for those grappling with PTSD and trauma. In a powerful book, it is called Biblical Cures for the Wounded Spirit. In it, author and former Army chaplain Wayne Keast shares transformative insights, offering biblical solutions for combat veterans and others who are suffering from deep emotional wounds. If traditional methods have left you searching for peace, this powerful resource may provide the hope and healing you've been seeking. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Wayne, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Yeah, Logan, thank you very, very much for having me on.
Being an Army chaplain must really put you on the front lines when it comes to people dealing with trauma. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, actually, I can probably back it up just a little bit to some enlisted days that I had. Uh, I had joined the Army and had put in about 7 years of active enlisted time. I was in Germany guarding Pershing missiles on a midnight shift. And I was kind of not reading my Bible, not allowed to have material up in the guard tower, but I was uh, running those things through my mind through kind of memorization I had done. And God took a couple of verses that I had worked from the Bible and kind of spoke to me about getting into ministry. So when I came down off that tower that night, I had a kind of a new plan, a new direction to go in. And so some months later, I was signing out of the service for the time and joined with the Army Reserve for a little while I was in college, and did my schooling, and still looking for that direction God was having me to go in. And by the time I was finishing off a degree, that God said, I think you probably need to check out the Army chaplaincy. So I looked into and applied, and they took me in, and so I began getting the training for that. But it was the incident that I had when I was deployed to Iraq back in let me see, 2005, 2006, and seeing the things that were going on. We were being shelled on occasion, and some mortar rounds, and we had some close calls. And the guys around me that I seeing how they were handling the situation. I was a bit of a nerve wrack myself. I had not been in that before, so I was learning how to handle that stuff myself. But the guys were dealing with it pretty well. But it was interesting that after the year we were there, we got back stateside. I was at Fort Carson, Colorado at the time, and these soldiers that I thought were looking like they were doing pretty well. So I hear about some of them going off to see the docs, the medics, the psychologists, all these different folks that they go to. And I get a chance to see some of them, talk to some of them, and they just seem to really be out of sorts and traumatized and stressed. And so I was kind of wanted to say I didn't think they really went through that much, but apparently they had encountered some things that they weren't ready for. And
Mm.
so they got traumatized, and it got me thinking about, well, the Army or even my college days, they never trained me how to handle this.
Mm.
So I sat down and started thinking about how I had approached that. But what occurred then is about a year after we were back, I had a traumatic incident myself. I came across an incident where I was having very difficult time breathing, and I come to a place where I went to the medics with it, and they checked me out and they sent me to the hospital. And next thing I know, about a couple months later, they arranged for me to have open heart surgery.
Huh.
And it was actually a thing called aortic stenosis. My aortic valve, my heart was shutting down, and I was suffocating. The thing was shutting down, and the blood wasn't getting through. So I was having that worked on, and as I was coming out of the hospital, they put me into a rehabilitation unit. And Lord kept opening doors for me. In this case, He opened up one where um, I was getting settled into the unit. Now I'm an officer, so I don't have to go to formations and all these accountability things they have for us. So I'm kind of looking around and see what's going on, getting used to the place. and recovering from my open heart surgery, and
Mm.
the commander of the unit comes to me and says, "Hey, chaplain, guess what? I need your help." And I'm thinking, well, I'm in rehab. I'm a patient. And he says, "I don't have a chaplain on my staff. Can you
Mm.
help me out?" And I thought about that for a moment. Wow. Okay, back to work, huh? Well, he said, "I know you're a patient and you're in rehab, so I'm not going to work you hard. Just go see my guys every now and then when you're feeling up to it."
Mm.
He gave me an office. So that was unusual. I didn't expect that. So I talked to some guys, and it was through those conversations from these men that I was hearing the same storyline across the board. Was that um, the psychology and the medications that the army uses to help out, supposed to help out, was not helping. And these guys were telling me about it. They said, "Well, I need to talk to somebody who understands where I'm coming from." And these guys don't get it. They've never been there. They've never been in a combat zone, and they didn't experience those things. And then, especially with the medications, they said those medications are designed to help someone. They kind of have you go into a fog, have
Mhm.
you have a problem with not thinking about the things that were traumatizing you. So the medication is kind of a medication to put you into a altered state of consciousness, I guess it was, and they couldn't function. I mean, couldn't function at all. Um, they'd go home, they'd isolate themselves, they wouldn't be with family. They keep up with trying to keep up with just living life, paying bills, being with family. It was hard for them.
Mhm.
And so I find out, I said, well, this is probably not the way we ought to be going. So it got me with my all the spare time I'm rehabbing. I got down and started opening my Bible and reading it. Start finding out some issues about the uh, the issues of PTSD, and said, I wonder if the Bible has anything to say about this.
Mm.
And I found out it did. So that was quite a startling thing to me. But said, well, of course the Bible has answers to things. You just got to look for them. So yeah, that's how that began.
Amazing, amazing. It's an amazing journey and an amazing destination to find out that the Bible addresses these issues that you were there to advise others on. And I think you're right. There's so many medications that are distributed today that
Yeah.
basically numb people from their feelings rather than actually getting to the root cause. So
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about what the Bible says about PTSD.
Yeah, I was doing some research on it, like I said, and I come across a some scriptures that had to do with King David, the Old Testament. He was he was a mighty warrior and a man after God's own heart, and so that was a unique combination. I don't see too many soldiers in that condition, but he was David was writing about the issues that he was having, and reading through the first and second Samuel about the different battles he was in, and then you go to the Psalms where he writes about his emotional conflicts with having to handle the trauma he's experiencing. Now, God says to him, "You need to go out and defeat this enemy. They are they're a pain, they're difficult to handle. They says it's time for judgment on them." And so he sends Davis out there to perform judgment. He goes into war. He leads the troops in battle, and he comes back from it, and he's got a lot of issues, a lot of problems with it. He says back then it was hand to hand combat. You go at it um, right there with the sword and prepped hand to hand, and with when a person sits down and dies, you know you did it. It was pretty obvious. They don't have a long shot, long distance shooting and the cannons and all these things they had we have now and before, but he had a hand to hand combat situation, so he knew who he had killed. But what he would be confident in was this idea that God had instructed him to do it. He said, "Under orders, I'm following God and what He says do." So he could take comfort in that, but he still have issues. And I noticed in some of his psalms as he was writing them, he would say that he was he would go to God in his prayer, and he would lay it out to him and say, God, this is the issue I'm having. This is the problem I'm having. And he would go through all the issues and the heartaches of trouble. And then he would come to the place where, God, I know that you can handle it all. You can do this. You can help me get through this thing. And I think that's where we kind of fall short today. Is a lot of our soldiers, they don't know how to come to God. They think they got to take care of this all by themselves, or they try to give it to the psychologist or whoever, and th're finding out it's just not working. They're coming up short, and so they're taking all this trauma and all this emotion on themselves, and it's beating them up. And so I was able to get those verses and show them that, and to help them with seeing where God can come in and give them peace and give them strength.
Wonderful.
In fact,
What was your read or feedback from the men and women that you worked with who were suffering from PTSD and were heard your words from the Bible? Did it help them turn their lives around, get them on a good path?
incredibly, many of them had a hard time believing it. They weren't. It was a slow process for some of them, and for many of them, um, it never clicked for them. They just couldn't understand or believe that there was a God who cared. And I think there's a lot of time we have found out in our society today that a lot of guys are joining the service and they have no religious background. In the chapel background that I have, they have print out these information sheets on the guys that are in the unit, and it gives religious preference. I run down through those lists of what's going on with these guys and where they're coming from, their background, and most of them, well, about half of them are no preference. They don't have a preference in their religion. And there's all kinds of denominations, Catholic and whatever else there might be, but about half of them are no preference. And
Hmm.
so these guys are. That was part of what I wrote in the book about the issue of these guys have no religious experience. In fact, a lot of things they've come to now is these the men that are filling out these forms, and the ladies too. They're filling out the forms, and they're saying that they are spiritual but not religious.
Hmm.
And I get thinking, okay, now what does that mean? And I'm thinking, well, they see religion as a time where you go to church, you put in your hour or maybe 2 hours, a couple times a week, and that's your religion. And so, okay, that's where they go. They say, well, I don't do that. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. They believe that there's something, someone out there somewhere that maybe you can connect with them and maybe you can't. But there's kind of a belief system that says, well, I'm not the only thing here. There's something else above me. And there's so many belief systems out there that it's you say, okay, you go to them and nail it down. It's okay. Well, just where are you coming from on your belief system? And back when I started, when I was just an enlisted soldier, I'd go to a chapel and says you had Protestant, you had Catholic, you had Jewish.
Right, and that
That
was
was
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all
exactly.
I had.
Well,
And now
hopefully your
there's
book works to
yeah,
put people on the right course,
mm,
that religion is important, that spiritualism is important, and a connection to God is important, and reading the Word of God in the Bible is important. The name of the
right,
book we've been
right.
talking about today is called Biblical Cures for the Wounded Spirit. In it, the author shares transformative insights that offer biblical solutions for combat veterans and others suffering from deep emotional wounds. It's a powerful book. It'll help you get on the right path, and it is highly recommended. Wayne, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Oh, thank you, Logan, for having me. Appreciate that.
I appreciate your time, sir, and your service. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.